Something very predictable is happening. It's been happening all day. It's reached a pinnacle now as I speak to you. As I watch the Fox All-Star panel, which never has a Reaganite on it for some reason. And that is the Washington crowd is circling the wagons. And by that I mean leading Republicans and these annoying so-called conservative commentators arguing as a chorus that we need to get past this continuing resolution, that there are only a few $1 billion involved, and we need to get ready for the really big battles involving the debt limit and the 2012 budget, the Ryan Plan. As someone who immediately supported the Ryan Plan when the congressman called me on Sunday night and discussed it with me at length, and as someone who has opposed lifting the debt ceiling from day one and attacked for it, unless we can get the balanced budget amendment, I find this kind of argument way off the mark. And then we're told that unless you agree with throwing in the towel at the 11th hour, 59th minute, and 59th second in this battle over this continuing resolution, you're an ideologue as opposed to a smart person. These people are way, way out of touch. They've done nothing to help the Tea Party movement. They've done nothing to bring a historic victory in November. They've supported all these little continuing resolutions, which was undoubtedly going to bring us to this point, as I said over and over again behind this microphone. But now they want us to move on. Now with victory in our sights, leave the battlefield, take whatever you can get, pocket it, I think one of them said, and move on. Let me explain something. And you already know this. This is all big stuff. All of it. We conservatives must take every opportunity to educate the public about what is going on in this country and hold those who brought us to this point to account. This is how you grow support for future political battles, bigger battles, battles over the debt limit and the 2012 budget and so forth. You must view these battles as opportunities that only exist because the Tea Party activists and the rest of you have been engaged, have made demands, have voted. If it was left to these Republicans and so-called conservatives in Washington, it'd be over already. These things don't happen overnight. You don't turn it on and turn it off with this continuing resolution or that continuing resolution. You must be resolute. This isn't about ideology. It's about reality. The reality is our country's going to hell, thanks to mostly the people inside the Beltway. And the people outside the Beltway are trying to change who's inside the Beltway. These battles, whether it's a CR today, the debt ceiling tomorrow, or the 2012 budget the next day, they're not exclusive of each other. They're one and the same strain. Well, Mark, if the government is shut down, the Republicans will be blamed. It will be a setback, et cetera, et cetera. This is Karl Rove today, the chief strategist for George Bush, who wouldn't veto a spending bill, let alone shut down the government. That's our new leader? But what we've learned over the past weeks is that massive parts of the federal government won't be shut down. What do they mean, a government shutdown? There isn't a government shutdown. There's something that's shut down, but it isn't the whole damn government. In fact, every essential element of the federal government will remain open. That's what they've told us. I've listened to them. That's what they said. Now, there will be some inconveniences. You won't be able to go to a museum or the national parks or get a passport. But the vast majority of Americans, certainly over the course of a 3 to 4 week period, are virtually unaffected, except the military, and I dealt with that yesterday, and I'll deal with that more later today. Now, the states don't close. The local governments don't close. The private sector doesn't close. Why buy into this apocalyptical nonsense? In fact, if you heard the president speak today and yesterday, you heard him struggling to find examples of horror stories. He's desperate to have horror stories, struggling to find examples that will actually affect your life. There are damn few. Social Security continues. Medicare continues. Post office open. Law enforcement working. Military working. Border Patrol working. And on and on. The essential parts of the government, their phrase, as determined by them, the government. The essential parts continue. Now it has come to a head. It's all teed up. We're where we're supposed to be. We're driving back the statists. in an important battle over the future of this country, and it will build to the next battle and the battle after that. And we're being told by some Republicans and so-called conservative commentators, drop it. Move on. Get ready for the next round. I just heard Huckabee say this. Huckaphony. Get ready for the next round. The little battles. Well, the little battles lead up to the big battles. And all the battles result in momentum. We've gone from $100 billion down to $61 billion, and now reportedly down to $38 or $40 billion. If they shut the government down, we'll get a better deal. And they'll know we're serious in the next battle. And it's not 1995. The American people are serious people. They know exactly what's going on. Look what just happened in Wisconsin. Look what happened in Ohio. Look what happened in Virginia, New Jersey. We praised the governors. Those governors wouldn't exist but for us. We took back blue states. We took back states going blue. And we're going to take back more because we are going to lead this country. Not the weasels, not the wimps, not those who are always ready to cut and run or make some kind of deal. They think they're so clever. They just don't understand the seriousness of the American people, you. You're far more sophisticated and engaged than they think. And you want bold leaders. I didn't see any of these commentators and writers joining us at the Tea Party events, unless they were just scribes. I didn't see them organizing rallies. They're talking and writing to each other. They can't relate to you, and they prove it every damn day. And now all these fools are preparing to pat themselves on the back. What has changed in 3 or 5 weeks? What has changed? Nothing. They're all preparing to tell us that Washington works. Look at this. Those of us who don't agree, well, we're outliers. We're ideologues. We're extremists. Our own so-called scribes now sound like Chuck Schumer. We have these damn statists exactly where we want them. Notice they don't want to debate budgets and spending and taxes and debts and deficits. They want to claim that if you cut a few $1 billion from a $3.6 trillion budget, women won't be able to get birth control pills. Now, are you persuaded by that argument? Yesterday it was $6 million, or was it $3 million? Pelosi couldn't figure it out quite because she's a liar. Seniors, they wouldn't get meals. Well, that was proven to be a bald-faced lie, just like everything else coming out of their mouth. And those of you who are for abortion, don't worry. The abortion mills are going to be running overtime. And it amazes me. They pour $3.5 million into Wisconsin, the left. Obama wants to raise $1 billion for one campaign, never heard of in American history, but Planned Parenthood can't survive without federal funding. You would think if abortion is so important to the left, they'd figure out how to fund it. Well, they have, to get it from you. So we have these statist Democrats exactly where we want them. They don't want to debate budgets. They don't want to debate these things. And yet we're being told, surrender now. Leave the battlefield. There are bigger battles tomorrow. I want to tell you a little story. Many of you know this, but some of you may not. The Civil War. No, this isn't the Civil War, but there's a moral in this. George McClellan, general put in command of the Army of the Potomac by Abraham Lincoln. He immediately flung himself into action, writes CivilWarAcademy.com, reorganizing the defeated Northern Army. He promoted quality officers and fired incompetent ones. He made the troops drill day in and day out, bring strict discipline to every man in the Army. Eventually, the Army of the Potomac grew to 100,000 men. His men adored him. McClellan gave them pride and the confidence they needed. They needed to take on and defeat the rebel army. Little Mac, as his men referred to him, was at the top of his game. He turned the Army from a pathetic ragtag force into a shining example around the world of what a professional army should look like. After all the preparation, it was time for George McClellan to actually lead these men south and confront the rebel forces. This was McClellan's failing. Although he was exceptionally brilliant in many things, he was not much of a leader when it came to actually commanding troops in actual combat. He was very cautious, always overestimating the size of the enemy. He always believed he was greatly outnumbered and was constantly seeking more and more reinforcements. He was afraid to attack. He did not want to put his men in harm's way and wanted to keep them safe, and they in turn loved him for this. But that's no way to ever win a war. Lincoln knew this and prodded McClellan to attack. A half-hearted attack to capture Richmond the Confederate capital, began with the Peninsular Campaign in the summer of 1862. The Army of the Potomac very cautiously moved forward toward Richmond, eventually coming within only a few miles of the capital. McClellan was attacked several times by General Robert E. Lee, the Army of Northern Virginia, which was much smaller in size than McClellan's army during the 7 Days Battle. Although never being actually defeated in these battles, McClellan nevertheless retreated. Lincoln eventually ordered the Army of the Potomac to evacuate the peninsula. McClellan was equally ineffective reinforcing Union troops during the Second Battle of Bull Run, which led to another Southern victory that summer in 1862. With his recent victories, Lee decided to invade the North. Lee confidently attacked the North because he knew who commanded the Union Army. Lee was not in the least bit afraid of McClellan. McClellan was more of an asset to the South, and Lee took full advantage of this battlefield incompetence. In September 1862, Lee invaded Maryland, setting off the Battle of Antietam, which would turn out to be the bloodiest day in American history. Antietam was a nominal victory for George McClellan. The Union forces outnumbered the Confederate forces nearly 2-1, but McClellan was able to barely defeat Lee. The reason for this was that he failed to use his superior force in a mass attack along the entire line. He instead chose to attack in piecemeal, first against Lee's left, then the center, and finally the right. Lee was able to constantly shift his meager forces to whatever area was currently being threatened. After the battle, McClellan refused to pursue Lee and destroy the Army of the North, that is, Northern Virginia. That's what I meant, allowing them to escape and fight another day. This was the last straw for Lincoln. He fired McClellan in November 1862 and replaced him with General Ambrose Burnside, who would go on to become the worst military leader in world history. Now, this is not the Civil War, but it is, in fact, a battle over the future of this society. I don't need advice, and neither do you, from some of the most profligate Republicans in American history when it comes to spending and expanding government. I don't need advice from people who want to be president, but as governors raise taxes, time and time again. We are conservatives. We are the Tea Party movement. We want to save this country. We're not going along with this crowd anymore. We're just not going to do it. We're not ideologues. We're not true believers. We're Americans. We've done it their way. And now look, the nation is on the brink. Take the change and run, they say. Battle another day. Fascinating. Paul Ryan puts this budget together. Did Huckabee put this budget together? Did he even suggest it while running for president? How about the others? Did Bush put a budget like this together? Did he even suggest it? No, it's time for fresh faces and fresh voices and new leaders. They damn well better fight this battle to the end and every other battle that follows. I mean, literally, you just got to watch the way these would-be opinion makers operate in Washington. It is stunning to me. I've noted it. I've talked about it at length with some of my buddies, Rush and Shun, and they agree. I mean, you just watch these people. This is acceptable. It's the biggest. They're the biggest cuts we've had in history. We have the biggest blowout budgets in world history. So, of course, we're going to need big cuts. This ain't them. We'll be right back.